how should we design learning experiences that are engaging and relevant?
Now, this is one of the big questions I have as well. We keep on talking about that we need to do this, and that's part of how I'm using video, or how I'm hoping to. I keep going back to this thing. I feel like teachers, no one knows the answer to this. Like it happens in a flash of inspiration, I think, when people actually make it engaging and relevant. But I guess it needs to be tied to real world practice. And I think that one of the flaws in our education system in general is that we have kids housed in a building and they're not in the real world. Like it's
So you don't see school as the real world?
I mean, no. I mean, of course it's part of the real world, but it's an institution that exists, and it existed for, Seth Godin's thing about schools were designed for, the industrial age. I still see that. Desks in rows, right? Classrooms, hallways, kids go there, schedules, bells, start, stop. Like it's like it was training for the industrial age. And so, yes, it's part of the real world, but I wish we could get kids to do real projects. But it's almost like school doesn't need to be as long as it is, because if kids needed to construct a boat to get across the island, you'd have all those skills embedded in an experiential environment. Like they would have to build the boat, test it out. They do that whole design process. Hey, well, how are we going to get everyone on board this boat? What should we do? Does it work? All right, let's bring it back and do it again. And you pull out the mathematical principles, but everything is done in such isolation, I guess, that, to answer the question again, that would make it engaging, because if it was real, if you actually need to solve a real problem, when we think about these things that we're saying, let's solve a problem that is, we're pretending to solve a problem. There are instances where kids are really solving a problem. Maybe if it's localized, if it's in their community, and then they can actually do it. And then I guess that also makes it relevant if it's in there, if it's real, if it's authentic.
So for you, the authenticity comes from, and sort of the relevancy comes from solving real problems, right?
Yes.
And so the abstraction layer, sort of taking the realness of the problems out of the equation, is where you have the institution, rather than sort of solving real problems and the relevant work of kids.
Yes, and the circle has sort of wrapped around itself over the years. You've got 3 kids, one of them has 6 lollipops, another has this. The abstraction of that is what makes it
less relevant,
less engaging, and inauthentic. Yeah.
And so you talked a little bit about projects, right? So saying we're solving a problem, this is the project that helps to solve that problem. Do you feel like every kid can engage in that process? And is there a way in which we can better support kids in sort of having that skill to contribute to a project or to engage in problem solving?
That's where I have the question also. One, yes, I think every
okay,
kid,
great.
Like everyone learns. I just think, and that's the root of knowledge and learning is having a problem that you need to solve. Whether it's hunger, how do I get that apple out of the tree, right? Kids learn to climb a tree or build a ladder or do whatever it is. You learn about physics in a way, like throwing something at that apple to get it down because they're hungry. Kids do that all the time. Even the kids that we don't think are smart, they're solving problems at home. They're figuring things out. They're able to get by. But it's like, I guess that brings me to the word engaging. If we can make the experience engaging for those kids, that's the thing. School's impractical and maybe not engaging to them because it's not solving a problem that they need to solve, or not one that they can see. It's an eventual problem. Like if they're future oriented and they're thinking about getting a job someday, taking care of a family, but you're talking about a 7-year-old in some cases, they don't make the connection. So I guess maybe one way we should design those learning experiences is to find the middle ground, like smaller projects that are engaging, obviously, to these kids in small steps. And again, I said this is a question I have.
Right.
I always think it's hard. One of the things I'm always getting at with video is like I have this notion of archives. I feel like a lot of times we talk about like here's what it should be, right? But we never show teachers here's a turnkey method for doing it. I feel like that's why a lot of ideas don't get adopted, because it's not accessible to teachers, so that they for them to be able to create these experiences. We're saying here's the idea. This is the type of experience you're supposed to create. Now go do it. And they're like, what? Do what exactly? It's almost like that's why I say it happens in a burst of inspiration. Yeah, a teacher hits on it one time, but I don't really know any teachers who do it all the time, because it's not a constant practice. Do you?
I mean, I definitely know teachers who focus on that sort of problem solving within their classroom, and really sort of that is their practice, is to create these opportunities to solve real world problems. But something you said is really interesting to me. It's either a problem that students currently need to solve, or that is sort of identified within their own lived experience, or it is showing that there are bigger problems to solve and sort of making that connection to those future problems, or to looking at maybe more systemic things that need solving, or perhaps even things that you could get excited about if you only knew that this was something you could engage in. And so I'm really interested in sort of that gap between the lived experience of 7, 8, 9-year-olds and sort of the problems that they see versus the problems that are real world problems, but that they don't necessarily see the connection to.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that you have to solve for that gap, but the way in which we start to think about, like, this is something that is more generally useful, like you need to be able to solve for particular mathematical concepts. You have to be able to sort of use mathematical thinking to get there, but we may not be able to get to that just by looking at our own lived environment. And so how do you create those engaging and rich experiences that don't have that immediate relevancy?
All right.
And so I don't know if you have any thoughts around sort of making that.
No, I would just simply say I agree with you. Yeah, there's a disconnect between that and like that space in between is the problem. Is the reason that conventional education isn't necessarily creating a workforce or people who can solve the problems in the real. Necessarily, they are, but I don't know how often this is truly learned in school, or is it learned through experience, where you experience a problem that you've had, and it makes you more adept at solving a real world problem. Or did you learn that in school? I don't know. Maybe you learned it in chemistry. I don't know where I learned it either. I haven't quite figured that out.
Right.
But I guess my most closely held idea about that would just be that you learn through problem solving, because you have a problem that you need to solve, and so you learn to become ingenious.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of what you're talking about is just how do you create experiential learning in order to get the things that we need to know and be able to do.
Right.
And so, it's a lot tougher when sort of life is the teacher versus you having a guide or someone to help you problem solve these things, and sort of the mental models to support. So I think this is a really engaging question, and one clearly that we don't necessarily have to solve in a few minutes. But I'm also very interested in sort of what is the question that you think, and maybe that is the question that is most important for us to be asking. But are there any questions that are sort of always eating at you, or that you think are really important for us to be asking?
Oh goodness. I mean, I guess along those lines, for the sake of just giving you a question in this, I'll say, how do we make a learning culture whose foundation is in authenticity, I guess. Like I forgot what you said a second ago, but that we're a lot of it's like sort of theoretical, if you will. Like here's a theoretical problem. Let's solve this one. How do we make it authentic? And I think that authentic problem solving is where you get real engagement.
But I think that question of how do we create a culture of authentic learning, or of authentic problem solving, or authentic experience, like, to me that is a hugely valuable question to be asking in many different places. Is this an authentic experience? Is this something that is connected to the lived experiences of kids and of the adults in the building? I think that's hugely valuable. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
We're done?